Hello everybody, back to Vietnam again today. So today we're going to talk about how America got involved in the Vietnam conflict and how it was just not good. So again, if you remember what we were talking about, America is going to try to go over and stop South Vietnam from becoming a democracy. Our premise is wrong. It's why this war is going to go wrong. Our premise is nobody would want to be communist. All right? If they're given the option, they're going to choose democracy every single time. In South Vietnam, that does not seem to be the case. All right? We can't make democracy look good to them. And the reason is really Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh has been there as long as anybody can remember. He's consistent. He cares about the people. Their society is more susceptible to liking communism, where everybody's equal, where everybody has a bare minimum of food, shelter, basic stuff like that. Societies like America, where it's a moving up situation, where it's a dog eat dog, where it is an American dream, you want to always be better than the next person. Communism does not work well in those societies. So America went in with the idea that there's no possible way they would want to be communist. That is a really hard thing to convince them of, because a lot of them really do want communism. There absolutely were people who did not want communism in their country at all and adamantly helped out America for the entire conflict. That absolutely did happen. But it does seem like, now probably the majority just wanted to be left alone. Viet Minh, whatever that meant, they're just tired of it. But it ends up being a pretty complicated situation, and there's no real way of winning this. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, as we're moving towards conflict here, America has taken out No Dien Diem here in South Vietnam. All right. When we take out No Dien Diem, that's a problem, because there's nobody else that wants to take over for him. So America, all right, America does some shady stuff. All right, back in the 60s and into the 70s, people didn't distrust the government as much until America does some stuff that's very shady. And they get called out on it later on, and it changes the trust situation for America. This is going to be a pivotal situation here. Everybody's going to believe this happens well after the Vietnam War, or 10 years later, people are going to find out that this didn't happen. Actually, it's more like 5 or 6 years later. Whatever. All right. So let me draw you a little picture. This right here on your map, that is called the Gulf of Tonkin. If you see here, this whole thing, this is boop, 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 boop. That's North Vietnam. This is South Vietnam. Technically, South Vietnam is a democracy. They're basically governmentless at the time, but boop, 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 boop. This here is now in yellow. That's the Gulf of Tonkin. So America keeps putting more troops in South Vietnam to keep them from getting taken over by North Vietnam. It's not going well. We need a lot more troops put in South Vietnam. However, the American people aren't going to accept that, because why would they? The only way American people are going to accept war, like all-out war, where we all like send a bunch of people over there, where we have to like bring back the draft, because that's the level of soldiers we're going to need to defend South Vietnam, all right, from the evil North Vietnamese. So what ends up happening, all right, is if North Vietnam attacks America, everybody is super gung-ho. Guess what happens? North Vietnam attacks America. Now, you might be like, well, that seems dumb. Why would they do that? Well, we're going to learn later on they probably didn't. But we said they did, and that's all that matters. So in the Gulf of Tonkin, we put a battleship. That's my little ship right there. We put a battleship. It's called the USS Maddox. So USS Maddox. All right? The USS Maddox is in the Gulf of Tonkin. All right? All of a sudden one day, I could go through the whole story, what they say happens, but we're pretty much sure it never happened. America claims that 2 North Vietnamese gunboats came out and shot at the USS Maddox. All right. That's almost verifiably today is false. It did not happen. However, at the time, America 100% believes this has happened. This is what we are told. Like, the government, this is the things that really eliminate trust in the United States government and leads people up to present day to question, like, what's the government doing? Because they did stuff like this, and it was dumb. So they, instead of, like, whatever the reason is, they say we got attacked. So now the American people believe that the United States military is getting attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin by the North Vietnamese. This is going to lead to the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. Now, this is extremely, extremely important. Come on now, don't be weird. So, let me X out of this. None of that map. This is going to lead to the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. If we're still taking a final exam, which I believe we are not, I can guarantee you this is going to be a question on the final exam. Just like I know Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson arguing over the National Bank, always a question on the American One final. Gulf of Tonkin, always a question on the final exam for American Two. We've learned a ton after the Gulf of Tonkin situation. What the Gulf of Tonkin does, and it's called the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. Congress meets. Now, understand the policies at the time. America is getting ready to declare war on a communist country. Who's going to have a problem with that? Russia, right? So if we just straight up declare war on North Vietnam, Russia's going to come out of the woodwork and come defend North Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh does not do a whole lot with Russia, all right? North Vietnam doesn't do a lot with Russia, all right? There is some involvement. There is some communication there. But again, North Vietnam is not going to be a satellite nation. It's Viet Minh. So what the issue is going to be is, man, see my brain, even I'm at home and y'all ain't even distracted me and my brain just shuts down. It's like, I don't know what we're talking about. Sorry. Reset brain. Gulf of Tonkin resolution. Okay, so if we attack North Vietnam, Russia's going to get involved. Like, that's just going to happen. North Vietnam stays out of cahoots with Russia because they don't want to be controlled, but Russia's still their alpha communist country. We cannot declare war on North Vietnam even if they attacked us, because could lead to World War III, we all die. So they passed the Gulf of Tonkin, the Tonkin Gulf Resolution, instead of a straight up declaration of war on North Vietnam. Now, what the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution says the President of the United States, which at the time is Lyndon B. Johnson, has complete and total power to do whatever is necessary to defend South Vietnam. Now, which means we can put all the troops we want in South Vietnam to defend them. We can't invade North Vietnam, we can't go into Laos, and we can't go into Cambodia. But we can do anything we want now, Lyndon B. Johnson can, in South Vietnam. Here's the part of the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution that was a mistake and we acknowledge today. The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, Tonkin Gulf Resolution, gives the president complete authority here, to the point where Congress gives up all their authority to put a check and balance on them. If this becomes extremely unpopular, they've tied their hands and they have no way of bringing these troops home. There's no way they can do it. So the Tonkin Gulf Resolution gives the president too much power. It's completely on the shoulder of the presidents to win this war. So when the war does become very unpopular, all right, and it's going to get very unpopular relatively quick, the Congress, because they already gave the president all this power, don't have the ability to bring them home. So all the pressure is on the president. And again, the mentality is America's never lost a war. That's not true, but that's what we believe at the time. So any president who just, when it goes bad, decides to leave and lets it become communist, can't let that happen because of the domino theory, because it looked like America's weak. How can this third world country beat us? It gets crazy. So the Tonkin Gulf Resolution gives Lyndon B. Johnson complete and total power in Vietnam, and they basically just let him do whatever he wants, and there's no way to stop it. First thing he's going to do is bring back the draft. you got to draft a ton of men to go over here and fight in South Vietnam. Everybody's like, go where? What country is this? I've never even heard of that. Who are we fighting? Like, and so it gets real confusing real quick. But he brings back the draft and starts drafting young men and starts just pumping them in South Vietnam, hoping that the more troops you put in South Vietnam, there's no way they can stand up to American firepower. Like they just can't. So surely we're going to win at some point, right? This is just a photograph of Vietnam. So helicopters, if you've seen it, when America gets over there, there's not a lot of airports and stuff because it's not a really advanced country in South Vietnam. So we travel very heavily by helicopters. So this is common scenes that you see in South Vietnam. So 50,000 troops are in Vietnam by 1955. So JFK was actually there. JFK was the guy that was around when No DM gets taken out. So it's not like it's all on Johnson, but when it goes bad, Johnson's going to get a lot of the blame for this. All right, and basically Johnson's entire time in office is overshadowed by this war. But in 1965, after the Tonkin Gulf Resolution, 61% of Americans supported the war. It means 39 were either didn't care or were against it. That's a huge support. So it was like, awesome, we're going to go in here, we're going to kick this third world country around, we're going to make them a democracy, everything's going to be fine. That is not what is getting ready to happen. There's going to be an escalation. Everybody says, all you got to do is just send more troops in there. What are they going to do? Like, the American firepower is so much more superior than what they have. There's nothing they can do to stop us. So while we can't invade North Vietnam, we do bomb them some. However, it's kind of weird how we do it. All right, it's a real touchy game. Like Russia, not trying to poke that bear too much. What we end up doing is we will tell them in advance where we're going to bomb at. We do that so all the people can get out. But when it's like things that are immobile, like ports and tankers and stuff like that, if we tell them we're going to hit them in advance, they can't get rid of their oil supplies and stuff like that in enough time. So they can get the people out, but we go in and bomb them. So we kind of warn them in advance before we bomb them. We're trying to just to prevent blowing people up in North Vietnam because that's when we get Russia involved. But we also are trying to strategic. So these are the type. You're right there on the edge of what is going to be acceptable and what isn't. But we are not going to invade the North. All right. So the best way of me doing this, because I'm going to reference this a lot, is tell you the story. So if we were in class right now, I would go through and I'll tell you the story, and it is really, really, really important. I believe the next slide as well here. Let me check my notes. Yeah, so the next slide talks about napalm, search and destroy missions, as well as the Viet Cong and the tactics. So it was absolutely awful. So when America shows up, the first thought is, we're going to use the South Vietnamese army, we're going to train them and have them go fight. However, the South Vietnamese army is useless. They usually don't fight well. In large part because a lot of the people that are joining the South Vietnamese army are Viet Cong. Civilians in South Vietnam who want to be owned by North Vietnam. So they'll join and then they'll just desert. So you're down people. Like the South Vietnamese army was never effective. It just wasn't. The head general in Vietnam is General William Westmoreland. Had this war been a success, he may eventually have been a president. It is not going to be a success. So you've probably never heard of him. He says the South Vietnamese army is awful. And he's right. It's just really, they're just ineffective. All this fighting has to be done by Americans. We need more Americans. This is when the draft comes back. We start drafting these guys and sending them over to Vietnam. Now, I want to tell you what the typical story is of an 18-year-old who's about your age, of what their experiences can be in Vietnam, and it is. Now, I also want to point out, here's what I want you to understand. Everything we're getting ready to tell you is just the horrific nature of what happens in Vietnam is not unique to Vietnam. All war is ridiculous. Vietnam just gets better documented. So war is just absolutely atrocious. But I want to explain to you what the experience was for Americans in Vietnam at the time. your typical American that's going to get drafted. Now, not everybody will experience all the stuff that's going to happen to, we'll say, Billy in this story, but everybody, these were all common experiences. So Billy, 18 years old, right? Typically, if Billy's a high school dropout, all right, he is going to be the very first one drafted, right? The way Billy could avoid being drafted, all right, is if he went to college. If he went to college, Billy does not get drafted. So anybody in college was not drafted because they had college deferment, all right? So I'll make myself a little bigger here since I'm going to talk here for a little bit. So if Billy went to college, Billy would avoid being drafted. Well, they realized so many people were going to college. I mean, college enrollment skyrocketed. They started saying, all right, just because you went to college doesn't excuse you, because sometimes rich people would go to college and never go to class and just so they wouldn't get drafted. Well, what would happen is, what the United States government ended up saying is, all right, fine, you have to have a 3.0 or higher GPA in college in order to avoid the draft. Guess what happened to college GPAs? Skyrocketed. Everybody's like, no, I'll just study for this test, because if I don't, I can get drafted, which was literally like a thing that could happen. So here's what happens. Who had to go fight in this war? Who was drafted? Poor people. Poor people went. You know who makes up a large portion of the poor population? Black people. All right? Because black people were the poorest part of societies. Not only that, but schools were still segregated. So black people only made up like 13% of the population in the United States, but like almost 35% of the people that were drafted to go fight in Vietnam were black people. All right? Which is going to lead to a whole nother issue, the fact that America doesn't value black people to the point where they're treated equal in society. But guess what? You can go fight and die for your country. So there's going to be a racial aspect to this as well that we'll talk about later on. But my kids are acting like stampedes upstairs. All right, so Billy, 18-year-old, we'll say he dropped out of high school. Billy gets drafted. All right. We'll just say for this instance, it doesn't really matter if Billy's white or black. It really doesn't, because it's going to be the same experience when you get over there, but there is absolutely going to be racial tension in the platoons, because Vietnam's also going to be the first time, while all the civil rights movement is going on, and there is all this tension, the platoons and the units are desegregated for the first time. White people and black people serve next to each other, so there is an added level of tension to everything else that's happening here. So Billy, he gets drafted. Whatever. All right, he doesn't really want to go to Vietnam, but he got drafted. He goes to boot camp, and he is trained in boot camp, and then he's shipped to South Vietnam. He ain't ever seen what South Vietnam looks like on a map. He don't know. He shows up over there. We'll say he's a Marine. So what Billy's job is over there, typically on a general day in South Vietnam, is go on search and destroy missions. All right. So he'll go on long walks with his platoon, all right? And what they're looking for is the Viet Cong. They're trying to secure South Vietnam, and they're looking for the Viet Cong, right? They can find the Viet Cong, they kill them. Now, who are the Viet Cong? The Viet Cong are civilians in South Vietnam that are actively fighting against America. This is a really hard thing to determine. How can you decide if somebody's the Viet Cong or not? You have to like catch them in the act of like doing something, because they could be not Viet Cong all the time, or like 90% of the time, and then only 10% of the time go do stuff that actively fights against you. So these guys have to like march throughout South Vietnam, these Marines, and find the Viet Cong and destroy them. They're called search and destroy missions. So what typically happens is Billy, he'll be in a line, and you'll be marching a long line. Whenever you see movies or anything about Vietnam, it's like always in the jungle. There is a lot of jungle in Vietnam. However, and this is important, there is a lot of wide open fields in Vietnam too. A lot of rice paddies and stuff like that. However, the fighting typically takes place in the jungles, because that's where the Viet Cong is going to decide to fight the Americans, because they have better coverage there. Typically when the Americans fight the North Vietnamese Army, the NVA, all right, they win hands down, because the North Vietnamese armies are wearing uniforms, they're coming over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, you can shoot them, it's fine. America's kill-death ratio is astronomical. We kill like 10 or 12 enemy combatants for every one American that is killed in Vietnam. But Ho Chi Minh realizes this. So Billy, walking through the woods. So the Viet Cong, oh, they're brutal. They're brutal, man. This is the biggest issue that the North Vietnamese, or the biggest issue that the Americans had to deal with. So they're very poor. So their booby traps that they set are just, they're very smart, and they're very cheap, and they're very effective. They would take little things that said M16 bullet. They find one. Well, they take an unused M16 bullet, and they'll tape a tack to the bottom of it. Then they'll bury it in the ground. Only the little tip of it sticks out. And if you step on it on this trail, it'll go off and it'll blow off about half your foot. Now, are you going to die from that one? Probably not. But half your foot's gone. You ain't a soldier no more. You're going back home. And that's one less soldier in their country is how the Viet Cong view it. They'll just dig a hole and put bamboo spikes there with this very, very, very venomous frog poison. That sounds crazy. Vietnam's a dangerous place. Frog poison on it, where if you slipped and fell in that hole and it stabbed you, you would die. They would have these booby traps on these trails all the time. So if you're Billy and you're walking through in a single file line, you're always looking to see if there's a booby trap there. All right. If you've ever seen the movie Forrest Gump, and it's a fantastic movie, I hope if you've never seen it, I'd give that to you almost as a homework assignment. It's great. There's a great job of showing Vietnam because it's not biased. It just shows you what life is like for somebody that's oblivious to the politics of it. If you've seen it, Forrest Gump in the movie, it's one scene early on in the movie when he's in Vietnam. He's like, we're always looking for this guy named Charlie. Charlie is code word for Viet Cong. So if you're looking for Charlie, you're looking for Viet Cong. So as you're walking through and you're being really, really careful, trying not to step on anything, there's also, and I would call them snipers, but they're not really snipers. It's going to be a Viet Cong guy. Now, he may be in a nearby village. He may be a farmer. He's going to climb up a tree, and he's going to sit right, I mean, he might be 15 feet from the United States military as they go walking right by him on the trail. He knows, all right, that there's something they have learned from fighting the Japanese, something that they've learned from fighting the French and now the Americans, and this is crazy. If you've never thought about it, it is crazy. If you fire one shot in the woods, your brain doesn't know where it came from. It just doesn't. If you fire two shots, your brain can like triangulate it and find exactly where it's from. One shot, you don't know. So they know he can fire one shot and nobody knows where it came from. It can be loud as crap. And he's like only 15, 20 feet maybe from the troops, but he's in a tree and he's covered with jungle stuff because you can't see it. And what he's going to do is he's going to shoot one of the American soldiers. Shoot him in the head, kill him. Now, who's he going to shoot? He doesn't shoot the first guy, or the second guy, or the third guy. He always shoots the last guy in line. And the reason why he does that, all right, and it's all psychological. The Viet Cong play a lot of psychological games. He shoots the last guy in line because if you shoot the last guy in line and he dies instantly, everybody's horrified. They can fire into the woods or whatever. No idea where it comes from. The Viet Cong guy can climb down and walk away. When you shoot the last guy in line, every single person in that line knows that you walked through those crosshairs. The only reason that you died, or you didn't die, is because you weren't at the end of the line. So trying to be, and then the guys in the front of the line gets the booby traps, the guy in the back of the line gets sniped. So the safest place to typically walk is in the middle of the line, which usually the guys that walk in the middle of the lines are the guys that are either specialists or guys that do like awful jobs like looking in holes. And if you've ever seen Forrest Gump had to look in these holes that we'll talk about here in a little bit. And that's why Forrest Gump's always allowed to walk in the center of the line. And anyway, a lot of things that Forrest Gump, he doesn't know what's happening to him, but it's pretty accurate movie as far as the environment of the time. So if you're Billy and you're walking through and you've seen a guy get his leg blown off, you've seen a guy fall into a frog pit and get stabbed and die, somebody's getting shot in the head back here, you haven't seen the enemy yet. Like it just is very frustrating, all right? So you walk out, so you know the Viet Cong's around because these booby traps have been happening, so you know you're getting close. So say you're walking across a field and the Viet Cong does sometimes come out and they just open fire, all right? So you're walking across the field, and again, if you've seen Forrest Gump, does a great job of showing this. You're walking across the field and the Viet Cong have some machine guns, they do have some equipment. They'll be in the tree line and open fire, all right? So everybody ducks down and waiting for it. The American military is so much more advanced than the Viet Cong that what they can do is they can call in airstrikes. And they do this all the time. So if you're being pinned down and the Viet Cong have actually decided to attack, they're at a location, you're at a location, You can call in, if you're the American, you can call in an airstrike, and they'll be there like almost instantaneously. You can pinpoint exactly where they are, so this isn't like World War I, you get blown up by your own ammunition and stuff. You fly over, and the airplanes are going to drop one or two things on the Viet Cong. They may drop napalm on them. Napalm is like fire jelly, right? It drops it, it hits the ground. If it gets on you, you can't wipe it off, and it burns, and it's just like dropping lava on you. And it's absolutely brutal. After Vietnam, the United Nations is going to look at that and be like, yeah, you can't drop lava on people anymore. We're just not going to do that. Like, so present day, napalm is illegal in warfare, just like flamethrowers we used in World War II, and the United Nations is like, yeah, we're not going to use flamethrowers anymore. So it was legal at the time, not anymore, to just drop fire on them, all right? So you could drop napalm on them. There's another thing you could fly over and you could drop, and it's called Agent Orange. It's a chemical. It's like Weed Be Gone on crack, right? You can fly over them and drop Agent Orange on them, and it just disintegrates the jungle. So the jungle that the Viet Cong is hiding in just gets disintegrated almost immediately. See if I'm a good teacher, and I got a picture here. I do somewhere. Don't worry about that. We'll get back to that. All right. This was a jungle like 30 seconds before this. You drop Agent Orange on it, and it just disintegrates everything. Now, so you drop it on them, and it disintegrates, and you have all these Viet Cong guys that are sitting there like, uh-oh, like, this isn't good. And then the American troops will start chasing them. They'll go chase the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong turn around and take off through the woods. So Billy's hitting her, chasing him, like, I'm going to get you. And he's following like three Vietnamese guys. All right, he's just chasing them through the woods, chasing them through, and then all of a sudden, there's just two Vietnamese guys. He's like, what? Where'd the other? All right, fine, whatever. So he's chasing these two guys. All of a sudden, there's just one. Like, they're like just disappearing. He's like, what in the world is happening? What we don't realize, or we do to some extent, they had these underground bunkers and all these secret entrances. So they would just hop in these underground bunkers and go hide underground. All right. The average Vietnamese male is considerably smaller than the average American military Marine. So they dig the holes just big enough for the Viet Cong to fit into, and Americans can't go in there. They also, if you had a really small Marine, they have them like booby trapped and stuff. So going in after a Viet Cong in one of these tunnels is suicide. The whole war, once we see somebody go in these tunnels, we're like, we got you. We'll pull out a grenade, like chuck it in there, like boom, like got him. The whole war, we thought we were killing them. Man, these things are so advanced and so deep in the ground. There's entire cities underground. We never got any of them. We didn't learn this until after the war. We thought we were blowing them up the whole time. Nowhere close. They had like entire underground from the time Japan was there. So they're darting off in these little like emergency entrances into their underground cavern, and they're safe. We think we're killing them afterwards, but we're not. So we're chasing that third guy, and he like goes and runs out into a pond, and we're like, ho, 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 ho. And Billy's like, let's get him, right? And he sits there and aims and waits for the Viet Cong to come up, and he just doesn't, ever. Because they have underwater entrances into these underground situations. So now, Billy is just frustrated, man. He's like, oh, I've lost, my friend's getting shot today, got some frog poison on them, getting their feet blown off. Now we just got in a firefight, and he killed a whole bunch of us, and we haven't gotten, I'm so angry. I know the Viet Cong's around here somewhere, all right? So Billy's just frustrated, all right? So Billy goes out and goes walking. Now, Billy's best friend, we're going to say he's Joey, all right? And again, Viet Cong is all psychological warfare as much as anything else. So they go marching some more, all right, on their long hike they have to do that day. And Joey's like, hey, man, I got to pee. And then Billy's like, oh, fine. Joey's got to pee, everybody. Like, oh, Joey's got a pregnant woman. Whatever. And so everybody stops, and they're like, all right, 5-minute break. So Joey goes around behind a tree to take a leak as everybody's sitting here taking a break. And then they're like, all right, it's time to go 5 minutes later. They're like, yeah, Joey ain't back yet. Like, what? How long has he got to pee for? So all the Marines are just hunkered out right here. Walk around behind the tree to see what Joey's doing, all right? What would mess with you more? Would it be walking around out there and seeing that Joey is dead, that somebody has come up and stabbed him and killed him directly next to the other Marines and just left him there? Or you walk around back there, Joey's gone. But all of his clothes, all of his equipment, his dog tags and everything is folded up into a nice, neat little pile behind that tree. That's what they did. They'll take you, And 90% of the time, what they would do with Joey, they're going to take him about 10 miles out in the woods and they're going to execute him. 90% of the time. The other 10%, they take him to a prison camp and they torture him. Awful. John McCain, who is a politician, he ran against Barack Obama in 2008, maybe how you know him. He was a Vietnam War veteran. Didn't have very good use of his arm. He had gotten captured by the Viet Cong, and what they did is they ripped his arm out of socket every day. Ripped it out of socket, put it back into place. Let it heal back. Ripped it out of socket, put it back into place. Ripped it out of socket. Kept him for over a year at one of these prison camps. Ripped his arm out of socket, put it back into place. Ripped it out of socket, put it back in. So today he doesn't really have, he has passed away here recently, but did not have use of his arm very well because they completely destroyed it. He said the worst part about it, they would never ask him a question. They weren't interrogating him. They're just torturing him because they don't want him to die. They'll torture him every single day. They don't want him to die. About a year, 2 years later, they'll release him. They'll just drop him off somewhere, back to the American military base. Since his arm was jacked up, they knew that he couldn't fight again, and they'd mess you up enough where they knew you weren't going to go back and fight again. But they drop you off. Never once asked him a question. Over a year, tortured him every day. Never once asked him a question. You know why they did that? Because nobody ever came to look for John McCain. You know why? They just assumed he got taken out and killed. They tortured him every single day, and nobody was coming to look for him. They want him to survive. They want him to go tell the other troops, because you know, if you get captured, they're going to keep torturing you, and nobody's coming to look for you, because 90% of the time they take you out and shoot you. So Joey there, he's probably dead, but we don't really know. We don't know what's happening to Joey. Is anybody going to look for him? No. Probably dead. It is that psychological warfare that really messed with everybody. So now Billy, he's had his friend get shot. He's fallen in the frog hole and getting stabbed with frog poison. He's then the frog poison. One of his friends have gotten the foot blown off. He's had to fight the Viet Cong. They all seem to just disappear. Now Joey's just getting and it's like, oh, this is like all in the same. I mean, this could happen all in the same. It's just the psychological warfare is awful for the American troops. So Billy has to keep on with his daily routine. He marches into a village. Now, America had realized we need the South Vietnamese people to like us. They need to like us or they'll never listen to us. So America comes up with a pretty interesting idea on how to get the South Vietnamese people to like you. Well, if the kids love you, the parents will eventually like you. So what we do in South Vietnam with our troops is we give them Hershey chocolate bars to give out to the kids in South Vietnam. These kids have never had chocolate. They love some chocolate. This is very effective for about a week. So when Billy shows up in a village, guess who comes running up to him very first? When the soldiers come walking to a village, here come the kids, man. Herds of kids come running into you because they want that chocolate. And you give them out chocolate, and they're like, yeah, I got chocolate. Like covered in chocolate. So the whole concept was to win the hearts and minds of the South Vietnamese people. This was very effective, all right, for a very short amount of time. Because what ends up happening is Billy's walking into the next village. He's already had a rough day. He's walking into the village. He's about 3/4 of the way back in line. And as he comes walking into this village, guess who comes running up to everybody? All the kids. They come running. Ah! Well, some psychopath in the Viet Cong has strapped a bomb to one of these kids. And those kids run right up in the middle of the American troops, and they detonate, blowing up half the platoon and all the kids. Just disintegrates it. Billy's sitting here just covered in all his friends' blood. Kids and his friends are all just killed. Then he looks around, the rest of the village is deserted because it's a Viet Cong village, and it's just, and all this is happening, and he has no retaliation. Like, he's just, keep in mind, why is Billy doing this? Billy's doing this because he's required to do it. He was drafted by the United States military. Does he care? No. He's seen enough horror. You know what he wants to do? Live, go home, and he will do anything possible, anything necessary to survive and go home. He doesn't want to be here. He was forced to do it. He was drafted. He doesn't want to be here. But he has to keep on going. He walks into the next village. You know what comes running up to him? Bunch of kids. What's Billy want to do? Billy wants to live. You know what Billy does? Pow! 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 Billy's scarred for life. Billy's having to shoot kids to survive because he genuinely believes he has to do that to survive. The horror of that is the fact that happens in every war. That is what war is. It is not glorified like it is on TV. That happens in every war. Billy's trying to survive. Now, here's the difference in Vietnam and the other wars. The entire day all this crazy stuff has happened. The entire day. There's been a video camera behind them because the United States military allowed the news to go with them. They have videoed every single thing that happened that day. You know what's going to make the 6 o'clock news? Is it going to be his friend falling in the frog trap? Is it going to be his friend having his foot blown off? Is it going to be his friend getting shot in the face? Is it going to be not catching the Viet Cong? Is it going to be the kids coming up and killing all the American soldiers? Or is it going to be Billy shooting kids that are running up to him with smiles on their faces? That's what makes the news. That's what makes the news every night at 6 o'clock. That's what America sees. We are horrified as America. Why are our Marines out here shooting children? All right? They have no idea the trauma that Billy's with. There's no positives in war, all right? But it is shocking to the American people when we see this because that's what we see. We see Billy shooting kids. We don't understand why Billy's doing it. There's no justification for it. But again, Billy doesn't want to be there. I mean, it's an impossible situation for Billy. There's a ton of drug use. Opium and heroin become very common in Vietnam by the troops. They're just trying to survive. Like it is absolutely amazing what they go through. The PTSD rate in Vietnam is the same as it is from Afghanistan and Iraq. You know why? Because Afghanistan and Iraq are also awful because it's war. Everything doesn't get videoed. So here's what's even crazier, and then we'll end after this and pick up so you understand the mentality tomorrow. Say Billy survives, all right? He makes it all the way through. He served his tour. He gets back on an airplane. He gets to come back home. He's on an airplane. He's flying back home. He's like, oh my gosh, I survived. I can't believe I made it. He lands at an airport in America. There's already a big crowd of people out there to see him when he gets off. He gets off the plane. He ain't greeted with hoorays. He's called a baby killer. Marines, soldiers get off planes. The public's out there to throw things at them, cuss at them, call them all this other stuff, because they've seen what soldiers have been doing on TV. And he is viewed as pure evil. He was drafted. Didn't want to go. He was drafted. All right? Forced to do this. Comes back. Everybody hates him. Can't get a job. Nobody will hire a veteran because these guys are savages. We ain't going to hire them. Absolutely not. The homelessness rate of Vietnam soldiers when they get back is astronomical. All right. Not only is the homelessness rate astronomical, Billy, because he's been around Agent Orange all the time, which causes tons of side effects like cancer. Basically, any disease you can think of can be caused by Agent Orange. It's like the worst possible. I mean, it's absolutely insane what it can do to you. Not to mention what it's doing to the civilian population in Vietnam. But these soldiers get back, he has cancer and all this other stuff. He should have free health insurance for the rest of his life. But the VA, right, the Veterans Affairs, the group that is supposed to take care of your health care if you're a soldier, all right, refuses to acknowledge that Agent Orange is harmful. Billy ends up dying in America, a homeless man of cancer that he can't get treatment for because he can't afford insurance, because he can't get a job, and the VA refuses to acknowledge that his diseases are a result of the war. Billy's experience is very, very, very common. Looking back on it, that's the reason why the Vietnam War is so much more brutal than a lot of the other wars, is not only the horrificness of the war, but how these soldiers were treated when they got back. And we've learned a lot from that. But it is very important to go through and tell you the story of Billy, all right? Because as we go through now in Vietnam, you will understand the decisions that get made and why it happened, and why the United States population reacts the way it does. This picture here is very important for me to end on today for you guys. I didn't even want my picture on here, because I want you to look at the expression on these people's faces. If you want to be traumatized, go look up pictures of civilians in the Vietnam War. It's it is traumatizing because the things they'll show is all, because it was all videoed. Everything was videoed for the public, and people didn't understand war. This picture here, these are American sympathizers for the United States of America. All right, they wanted democracy. This is a village that supports America. When America shows up in their village, this is what they do. That is a sewage track. Look at the fear on their face. That is pure fear because the Americans have come into their village. We are not winning the hearts and minds. You can't blame the Billies. You can't. They're just trying to survive. They're put in an impossible situation. But when the civilian population reacts this way, pure terror that the people that are there to protect them have showed up there. I mean, this picture alone speaks more than anything else over how America was ineffectively able to win the hearts and minds of South Vietnam, and there's no way of winning this. How do you get them to like you, meaning America, and democracy more than communism? Anyway, all right, so that's as far as we're going to get today. We will pick up tomorrow and kind of talk about the political implications of the Vietnam War in America.